Blog Talk Radio.
Thank you for joining me tonight on Conservative is Cool Talk Radio. This is the weekly news with your host, Wayne Bradley. And tonight we're going to talk about the battle for North Carolina. I've got two great conservative candidates that are running for office in two different districts in North Carolina. We have Ilario Pantano, who's running for the 7th district in North Carolina. And later on this evening, we'll have Bill Randall, who's running for the 13th district in North Carolina, and he's also been on the show before, so we'll be welcoming Bill back. In the meantime, before Ilario calls in, I want to talk to you about all the different candidates that I've spoke to. It's really been a pleasure so far to talk to people all across the country that are running for different positions that are trying to make this country better. They're tired of the same thing from either side of the party, and we're now actively getting people more involved. Just normal people that want to get involved and make this country great. I think that's what we need. We need more people getting involved instead of just the obvious lifetime politicians. So again, I'm really appreciating that, and I think here's Ilario calling in right now.
Hello?
Hello?
Wayne? Hello, Wayne?
How you doing?
Oh, I'm so well. I just heard you say how we need regular Joes instead of lifetime politicians. I think I might qualify as a G.I. Joe, but I'm a Joe, baby. I'm a Joe.
I can really appreciate that. You know, I was doing my research on you, and you have an unbelievable story to tell. You've been through a lot, and I would like you to introduce yourself to everybody on the air, and let's give us a little background information about yourself, sir.
Well, I just have a couple of words to say. I'm not a lawyer. That's all. That should be all you need to know.
I know that's right. I can appreciate that. No lawyers and lifetime politicians. It's really.
Can you? Isn't it unbelievable? I mean, there was a time when we actually sent men and women to Washington that knew how to do things. You know what I mean? They knew they understood a little bit about other than how to make a semantic argument or how to talk for 20 minutes without saying anything. That's what we've got now. I mean, there was a time when we had people of industry, and certainly the service is important. Well, Wayne, first of all, thank you very much for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. My story is an American story. My story is I'm the son of an immigrant. My dad became a citizen in 1976. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's all you need to know about me is that my father escaped where he was born, that he could come here and have a better opportunity and give that opportunity to his children. And I feel like I'm a guy who got that flame. I grew up. I remember when Carter was the president.
Yeah.
I remember how it felt. You remember during the hostage crisis when there were numbers on the side of a construction site every day telling us how many days had gone by while our American men and women were being held hostage by Iran? You remember that?
Well, I was a little small guy at that time, but I've heard about a lot of those things during the Jimmy Carter days. I was a little guy.
I'll tell you, that was the apex of impotence. That under that Carter era, that feeling of like we're the greatest country in the world, and like we're brought to our knees. I was a boy, didn't understand it fully, but I remember how it felt when Reagan became president. I remember how it felt to feel like it felt like collectively like America was picking its chin up, and there was something that and I give you the background. I ended up joining the Marines when I was 17 and fought in the first Gulf War and did all kinds of goofy stuff But part of my desire to serve, part of all of that, it was born, as a kid, was born, in that Reagan era, was born seeing American ascendance, seeing America be unapologetic, seeing, knowing the greatness in the world, and knowing that it was really, and again, if your listeners remember, the Cold War, that was a real war. And it was us against the Soviets, and it could have been a nuclear holocaust at any time. And we didn't blink, and we didn't back down. I'm so proud of that. Wayne, who else do we have on the show with us tonight? Is Mr. Randall on tonight?
Yep, Bill's coming on after you.
Awesome. I wasn't sure if he was on with you or if I was just talking, if there was any, is there anyone else hosting with you now that I should be addressing, or is it just you and I?
Just you and I, my friend.
Oh, cool. Well, I guess then to give you a little bit more of the background, did some time as an enlisted Marine, thought I would become the commandant of the Marine Corps one day. and the best officers start as privates, right? And
Right.
and then the first Gulf War, and who's left to fight? I mean, the Russians were fighting side by side with us. There wouldn't be any more big wars, and so at the time, getting out, getting my degree, maybe I'd go back into the Marines, maybe I'd go do something else. At the time, I thought maybe I'd go into the FBI.
Okay.
And then I met a beautiful woman. I ended up going to do what a son of an immigrant does, and you go and you try and make some money. And I went to Wall Street, and man, I saw some things. I started as a clerk. I was going to college at night while I was working during the day,
Okay.
and I traded with companies like Enron and AIG. And now you know why I left. Huh.
So it was too dirty. You couldn't take it. You actually had a conscience.
I got to tell you something. When grandmas are dying in California because of the rolling blackouts, and the traders at Enron are laughing on the phone, that's you get jaded in a hurry. And listen, wait, I'm a capitalist. I started my own small business after that. I appreciate that free market capitalism is what's made this country great. The free market of ideas. I appreciate that so much. I really do. But for me personally, I've been a service-oriented guy, and it was hard. You remember when that TWA Flight 800 crashed off of Long Island, and they thought it was a bomb or a missile? They didn't know it was a big deal. It was back in the 90s. Well,
yeah, I remember that. I definitely remember.
you remember that?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
there were guys, there were traders on our desk that were, right away, their first instinct was buy oil. All they could think about was like, what, boy, bad news comes in, could be Mexican terrorism, buy oil. That kind of binary decision making that, by the way, if somebody's managing your money, you want them thinking like that. But
Right.
I'd rather have been in the water looking for survivors. You know what I mean? So I was just not in the world that I wanted to be part of. And it was just a very clear thing for me. So I decided to go and make people laugh and get into entertainment. I thought maybe that would be a good, honest way to make a living and do something good, and I could put a smile on people's faces. I started working I created a company. We were doing media consulting, and something happened. Something happened on September 11, 2001. Where were you?
I was home. I remember my grandmother woke me up and said, "Oh my God, it looks like we're going to war." I remember that very clearly.
Wow, that's what she said, huh?
Yep. She's not even alive anymore, but I remember that was the first person that called me and told me to turn on the TV and see what was going on, and that was the first plane that hit. So she called me, and the second plane hit. So I remember that clearly.
And she said it too. She said, "When we're going to war," and well, I'm really worked up about this right now. I just wrote a piece that just went live on military.com and some other places on this mosque at Ground Zero. I had worked in 4 World Trade Center, which was one of the buildings that was destroyed, and I got out of the subway on September 11th, and I was looking down Fifth Avenue, and I saw these buildings burning. And I knew, like your grandma and like you, I knew that, like all Americans, I think, right, that we were at war,
Yeah.
and our lives were changed forever. And and I think, like all Americans, and that's why I say I think my story is such an American story. I'm a son of an immigrant. And you go out and you serve, you go out and you do good, and then when your country gets attacked, boy, you go get it on like Donkey Kong. And
Right.
and
what did you do after 9/11? What did you do to go fight this?
I went to go get it on like Donkey Kong. That's it. I'll tell you right now. The first thing I did was go to the recruiter and see about getting back in. And I was too old and needed waivers. And I had served my first war in a time all the records were on paper, and now everything was in computers. And so my stuff's in a warehouse somewhere, like Indiana Jones. The Ark, in a crate somewhere in the middle of nowhere. They had to find my paperwork. It took 6 months. And in the process of waiting to get reactivated as a sergeant, as a sniper, I said, this is taking forever. Maybe if I want to wait this long, I might as well go through the process and actually and do this for real. And
Right.
so I decided to become an officer. And
Wow.
and so this was a life change. It wasn't just going to be about, hey, let me jump into the reserves and go get in the fight. It was, you know what, honey, you're giving up your big job, I'm giving up mine, and we're going and we're making this is a life changing move.
Wow.
And I'll tell you something, a year in Quantico, Virginia, it's a great place to visit. They have the most barbers of any city in America. but they only know how to give one kind of haircut.
I can imagine.
They only know how to give one kind of haircut, and it was a year of wonderful training there, and I love the Marine Corps, and Wayne, I love the fight. I love what we do. I love our men and women that pony up to do this stuff. I love them, and that's what people don't know. They don't know that that war, combat, service, all this stuff isn't about hate. It's not about getting the other guy. It's about you love your family, you love your country. It's worth dying for because you love it so much. You love your people, and you're going to protect your people. And and it's about love. It's about the love of the man on your left and your right.
Right.
They're my men. When I went to Iraq, I had 40 sets of parents look me in the eye with anxiety, wanting to know that I was going to take care of their kids.
Right.
And I loved their kids. And in fact, I was in my 30s. I had kids who were 18. Wow. I mean, they were my kids. And so we had we had a couple of doozies, and we had a couple of fights. We went over there in 2004. We thought, oh yeah, it's going to be peacekeeping operations. We just found Saddam. It's all over. It's all good. Mission's accomplished.
Right.
Not that way. I think your listeners remember we had contractors hanging from a bridge in Fallujah like barbecue beef.
Right.
And then everything exploded. And then it all went to hell in a handbasket, and we were fighting for our lives, and it was a terrible time. It was a terrible time. But I'll tell you what, we did what we had to do. In the process, I was charged with murder for killing terrorists.
Right.
And I ended up going through a grand jury, if you will,
right.
and so it was a big kind of a hearing, and it wasn't a court martial. It was like a precursor. They were trying to make a determination if it needed to go in that direction, and but the media was all over it. Boy, they loved this story because I was kind of like a success story on some level because I was like an American dream kid.
Right.
Who signed up for Bush's dirty war,
right.
and look at how this evil thing had twisted me, and therefore Bush and the war and everything is so evil and wicked. And so I became like this. I was like a battering ram they were trying to use to attack the war and to attack the president. And the bottom line is, I was completely exonerated, and in the process, of this very public hearing, very public finding of the fact. I got a lot of scars, and I got a lot of, I guess for lack of a better word, I was vetted. I was vetted, you could say. When you have hundreds of media organizations going through every aspect of your life, and you're on the cover of newspaper and magazines, you're vetted. And
right.
and so then a couple of years later, I'd write my book, and a couple of years later, Jack Murtha would make these charges against Marines in Haditha. You remember that?
Yep, I remember that, definitely.
Well, he says that Marines, were cold-blooded killers. He says all this ugly stuff. And, he was a Marine. And so he's selling out his own guys. And at the time, and you might remember, he's trying to affect the outcome of the midterms in 2006. Right. And he's trying to become the next Speaker of the House. And he helped them. He helped get that majority, okay. He blew himself up in the process, but he helped get them that majority. The only problem is he threw Marines under the bus to do it. And that wasn't okay. That wasn't okay for me.
Similar to what John Kerry did, to advance his own career, threw his own guys under the bus.
You are so right, and isn't that so darn disturbing? My goodness, great. You're so right. No, disgusting. Just disgusting. And so I mentioned my scars before because there weren't a lot of guys that could stand up to him. If you were a guy in uniform, you can't say anything publicly. And all of the best and the brightest are still over in Iraq and Afghanistan fighting the fight right now. All the best ones are either dead or they're still doing it. And it's kind of the guys that are broken and old, like me, that are all that's left to kind of talk about this stuff. Because all of our best and our brightest, they're still there right now, brother. They got 60 pounds of flak jacket on in 130-degree heat, and they're writing home to their wives. That's where the best of us are. And then the other ones are dead. And that's just the sad reality of it. And then the ones that are left, we're just, we're the scraps. Having said that, I was in a position to say, hey, Jack Murtha, you know what, our system works. I got the scars to prove it. We don't hide things. We don't cover things up. Even when it's not good for the service to talk about it, we'll talk about it. And you know what? I was very proud of the fact that I was able to challenge him and able to bring some attention to that. Anyway, life goes on. I became a deputy sheriff here in North Carolina. I'm in New Hampshire County. I'm in North Carolina 7th District. My website is pantanoforcongress.com if anyone wants to check it out. And the bottom line is little consulting, little working on a master's degree in national security policy. And Eric Holder starts going after the CIA. Do you remember that last year? Can you believe that?
I mean, to me, that's what the whole trial in New York is all about, is trying to put the CIA and obviously the past administration on a public trial. It's not about convicting those guys. Those guys are going to be in jail regardless of the situation. They'll never get out of jail, but they obviously want to publicize and put the CIA and the past administration on trial. It's not about those guys.
Well, you are 100% correct. I agree with you 100%, and I didn't like that one bit. And so I decided to do what I could to try and stop that. I started a little grassroots group called StandWithIntelligence.com. You know, we don't raise money. We don't do it. We just raise attention. Just try and get people like you and folks out there listening to dial in. The website StandWithIntelligence.com. And we tried to raise some awareness for the CIA. And I'll tell you, out of my pocket, I bought a bunch of bumper stickers. We put them around town in Washington, D.C., where I was going to school, and sent them to folks around the country. We got all kinds of folks to weigh in on this and send emails and write letters. And I was with a group of people up protesting in Manhattan when Eric Holder wanted to do those trials, and they did a protest back in December because I just thought exactly like you said. This is entirely political. This has nothing to do. This has nothing to do with our national security except as weakening it.
So you're like you said, you're at the grassroots level. You're there making a difference. You're going up to New York, protesting. What would you, if you're elected to Congress, what would be some of your core issues? What are the things you want to change about the way things are heading right now, and what would you do to improve, obviously the direction of America?
Thank you for asking that. First of all, if and when I'm elected to Congress, I believe that I'm going to be part of a majority. I believe that we're going to retake the House, and I think that that's very important because I genuinely think that it will be an opportunity for Obama to become a better president. And I genuinely think in the way that it has happened in the past, and certainly Clinton experienced it as well, that, and candidly, I don't think it was the best thing for the Bush presidency to have majorities in the houses. I think that when that happens and there are no checks on spending, especially on spending, I mean, look, we saw some terrible spending. We did get sloppy, didn't we? And we got sloppy on the spending, and it started, and Bush was sloppy with the spending. Now, of course, what we've seen in 18 months is enough to give you a heart attack. But what would I do? I want to fight the axis of evil.
Okay.
I want to fight the axis of evil. My axis of evil, Wayne, is taxation, litigation, and regulation. And you know what? I envision that as I thought the other one already. I envision this one. This is like a big 2,500-page burrito called the health care bill, the Patient Protection Act. And I see it as a single piece of legislation that in a couple million pen strokes encapsulates the three things that are the biggest killers to job, innovation, and ultimately our national progress: taxation, regulation, and litigation. We don't address tort reform. There's no meaningful choice. In fact, we take it away. We put the federal government in our lives from cradle to grave, which, by the way, when you have liberals just last year talking about a smoking ban in the military, when Mishka Brzezinski on Morning Joe on MSNBC says, well, we're paying their salaries, we're paying their health benefits, we can decide if they can smoke or not. And the pushback, of course, was, these guys are in war. You really want to decide if they're going to smoke? Well, let's fast forward 10 years when the federal government is the one, and ultimately the taxpayers are responsible for everybody's health care. Well, gee, do you get to go to McDonald's anymore? Do you get to chew tobacco? Do you get to have Coca-Cola? I don't know. Do you? Is the government panel going to let you? I mean, this is where we go. I mean, I'm obviously projecting out 5, 10. But by the way, the idea that there's going to be private insurance, you can always keep your private insurance. No, you can't.
Who's going to want to keep it? Who's going to want to keep it anyway when they're giving it away? And the employers are going to be the ones that are going to really stop offering those benefits. That's what they... Exactly. And
the same way Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Exactly. You got it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was preaching to the choir. I mean, when the federal government gets in this business, they're going to drive the bus, and they're going to drive people out of it, as they did with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and that's, of course, a disaster. And now it's going to be a disaster with our health care. And by the way, I was at a doctor's meeting here in my district, and I was listening to 50 doctors get briefed by a very smart, Harvard-educated lawyer and physician who, at the end of the day, had more questions than he had answers. And he was the consultant that was brought in to advise the hospital. You know who's going to make money on this? Consultants. And they still don't know, and they still don't have answers. But you know who does? The executive branch. This is a power grab. This is a power grab. And I don't like it a bit. But, listen, there's a lot more to this. I want to go to Congress because I want to promote job creation and stimulate the economy. Wayne, because you know what? Growing the federal government is not going to stimulate the economy. It's going to kill it because we've got to feed that beast. And now we're feeding ourselves our own guts, and we're telling ourselves that it's steak. And we got to stop, all the taxation that it's going to take to cover all of these new freebie benefits that's choking out the small business on the corner. So then even if you have health care, you won't have a job. And so what's the prescription going to be for starvation? What's the prescription going to be to heat your home? That's the question that people need to ask, and nobody's asking it. I want to protect our homeland. I'm a guy who was charged with murder for killing terrorists. Who's going to fight harder to protect your homeland? I don't think anybody. I mean, I put my money where my mouth is. I fought in 2 wars. I've been to Afghanistan as a contractor. Let me tell you something. I care about this country, care about protecting it. I've served as a cop. So I think I'm going to be pretty darn tough on, immigration. I'm the son of an immigrant, and I'm here to tell you I will take a very hard line on illegal immigration. I support everything Governor Brewer's doing in Arizona, and I will tell you that immigration is a national security threat and an economic threat. We need to address it.
Yeah, what do you think some of the best ways to address it are? I mean, me personally, I think that you need to at least start with a fence as a deterrence. But what do you think we need to do to improve the obvious immigration problems we're having here in America?
I think it's a multi-pronged thing, but first and foremost, I agree with you. You can't, and listen, I know this because as a deputy sheriff working in the jail, and getting, we'd get illegals in, and we would send them back home, and they would come right back.
Right.
And we'd send them back home, and they would come right back. Well, why do we want to spend $2 million on a piece of trash like that? When the bathroom, in an elementary school in one of my counties here doesn't have stalls on the door, I got to spend $2 million to send some guy back and forth 3 times, and he's coming back a 4th. So how about we start by doing what they say can't be done. You know what? They say we can't do it. It's too long. It's too much. It's too big. Let me tell you something. The Japanese said it would take 1 million men 100 years to take Iwo Jima, to take Tarawa. It took the Marines 72 hours. My point is you can do anything you set your mind to in this country. And I would offer to you that the first step is we build walls, we build fences, we use closed-circuit television, we use drones, we put troops, we have monitors, we have sensors, we patrol. We don't just patrol our side of the fence. Listen, I've been a Marine in combat. The defense is a strong form of combat, but you don't wait for them to come to you. We patrol their side of the fence. And I'll tell you something else. There's another aspect of being proactive. You make it painful for employers. If employers face real repercussion for hiring guys, if there's real punishment, if the person making the hiring decision could be fined, if individuals get pinched, then you know what? People will act in their best interest, and it won't be in their best interest to hire illegals anymore because the price break they get, paying somebody $5 a day and putting 2 or 3 Americans out of work, even though they don't want to pay the wages, that's going to go away. That's going to go. So it's a multi-pronged approach. It's a multi-pronged approach. You got to put pressure on the Mexican government to control things on their end. You got to put pressure here, on our own employers. Of course, you've got to have laws in place that, and by the way, we've got laws. We just need to be able to enforce them. Those laws need teeth. That needs funding and financing. We've got 287G program. The government needs to pay for all of that to be able to house these guys and then send them back. And by the way, we got to shut the darn door so they stop coming back through.
Right. I think the one thing you touched upon that makes a lot of sense to me, and obviously this being America and this capitalist society we're living in, you start putting the crunch on businesses. That will make there'll be less people wanting to come over here illegally in the first place. You put the fence up for deterrence, but then you start going after these businesses, these farming businesses and these industries that are essentially living off of illegal immigrants. And again,
Absolutely.
taking away jobs from people, that's always been the argument. At me as an African American, I've always heard, well, they come over and take jobs that no one else wants. Well, I just beg to differ on that at this point. The way our economy is, American citizens need to have an opportunity for those jobs, and it's very hard to do that when, like you said, when they're paying someone $5-10 a day under the table to come over here and work.
And therein is the point, because the bottom line is that there's a supply and a demand issue. And right now, the tremendous amount of demand draws the supply. The supply would go away. We need to ultimately try and address both. We need to try and address the demand. We need to try and staunch the supply. So we need to do what we can. Is it ever going to be perfect? No. But the jobs that nobody wants, well, ultimately, we'll start paying a little bit of a better wage, when in fact there aren't 50 guys lining up to take that job that couldn't do it. Now, having said that, there's another side to this coin, because a lot of people out there listening are scratching their heads and they're saying, you know what? There are a lot of people out there on an entitlement system that know they can make more money staying home and doing nothing than they can going out there and working in a restaurant or picking a crop or doing some construction or whatever it is. And they can make more money on their couch watching their flat screen TV. And that's the disgusting place we have gone.
We probably could spend a whole hour talking about the entitlement issues and how that takes away people's motivation. Like I said, I live in the Detroit area. And again, this is one of the worst places probably that you hear about right now as far as some of these kind of we're the poster child for entitlement programs here. And what it does is it encourages people not to work. Actually encourages people to have more children out of wedlock. Again, something that's destroyed communities. And again, that's just something, again, we could probably talk an hour about that. Another question I want to ask you about is, how do you think this administration is treating Israel? How would you treat this scenario, and how would you deal with it?
I'm so glad. I've got to tell you, this is my favorite interview of all time, and I'm not just saying that because it's 9 o'clock my time and I'm delirious and I've been talking and shaking hands and kissing babies all day long. I'm telling you that because you are on point. You've got it together, and I really appreciate you taking the time to put these issues out there. You know how I feel about it? I feel so strongly about it that just tonight, if you go to military.com tonight, there's an opinion piece that I just wrote that's just come out where I talk about the mosque at Ground Zero, I talk about Israel, and I talk about Iran. And these things are all related. First of all, what your listeners need to know is I've fought in 2 wars in the Middle East. I've trained with the Israeli army, and my wife is Jewish. I feel very strongly about supporting Israel. I feel very strongly that Israel is an important ally to us. And listen, one of the things that I feel very, very strongly about is that things have been put in motion where agitation and aggravation of the situation with Israel is often stoked at exactly the right time to draw attention away from other things going on in the world.
Right.
What do I mean by that? Do you remember in 2006 the Hezbollah rocket attacks into Israel, the kidnapping of soldiers, then a big war followed between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon? Do you remember that in 2006?
I definitely do.
That was on the back of a new round of tough sanctions on Iran. That was on the back of the UN getting ready to crack down and go heavy on Iran, and all of a sudden all that got swept under the table and forgotten about. Well, what's happened in advance of this Free Gaza flotilla being boarded? What was happening? The UN is getting ready to do a 4th round of sanctions on Iran, okay, where the Iranians are talking about, how aggressively they're expanding their production, et cetera, et cetera. And isn't it a coincidence that there would be, again, an explosion in the Middle East that would draw attention away from Iran? Well, you could say, maybe some of your listeners will say, well, it's just coincidence, or Israel's throwing its weight around. Or let me tell you something about this flotilla. One of the key fundraisers and sponsors of this flotilla, the Pradana Group, and I've got this mentioned on my op-ed, which is going to be on my website on PantanoForCongress.com. It's also on military.com. All right, one of the key fundraisers behind this thing that supports groups like the Weather Underground and Code Pink, they're also the guys behind this mosque at Ground Zero.
Right.
Okay, if you think that these things aren't all connected.
That's the most disgusting thing. I mean, and again, I'm from a city where there's a large Muslim and Arab population, and for the most part, these are peace-loving people, but to build a mosque at Ground Zero shows unbelievably bad taste. I can't even who would even suggest or allow something like that to happen?
A gutless political class that is more concerned with not being labeled extremist or intolerant than they are with doing the right thing and protecting people. And you know what? We've seen the consequence of that, Wayne, when a lot of Army soldiers, a lot of good men and women, no doubt, turned their back on this guy, Major Hassan, and pretended like they didn't know this guy was a fruitcake. And all of a sudden, 12 people are murdered and 30 are almost murdered. So almost we're talking about, in fact, this guy tried to kill about 45 people. He only succeeded a third of the time, but that wasn't for lack of trying. And that's what we forget about Ground Zero is 3,000 people died that day, but they tried to kill 30,000.
Right.
They tried to kill more.
A lot worse. They were going.
It was only because
though.
That's right, and it was only because of the heroism of Americans on planes, the heroism of Americans on the ground that went to help their brothers and sisters and bring them out, that that we were able to evacuate, that we were able to spare the Capitol. It was only because of heroism of Americans. So if we really want to, they talk about, this thing is 600 feet away from Ground Zero. I got a real problem with it. When I go to Congress, I'll tell you right now, there's going to be an investigation on where this money comes from, and I'll do whatever I can in my power to stop this thing. And I'll tell you, I do not like it. And how can I say that? Well, when $500 million a year in federal money go to protect New York and rebuild Ground Zero, then the American taxpayer, you in Detroit, me in North Carolina, we have a voice when a mosque, which is a martyr marker, make no mistake, this is a martyr marker. This is a trophy. This is a trophy. This is sacrilege. And I agree with you. And I wrote about it. Please dial up my op-ed, send it around to your friends, because I'll tell you right now, we got to raise our voices on this one.
I believe you on that. Can you give everyone the website address again for your campaign, and also give them the address to the for where you wrote your op-ed tonight, so all my listeners can go and check that out.
I appreciate that, and I will. And it's pantanoforcongress.com. That's Pantano, pantanoforcongress.com. And the op-ed is there, and you can share it from the website, but it's also on military.com right now. You can check it out there. They've done some of my other op-eds and some other articles over there, and it's a good site for people that are interested in defense issues. But pantanoforcongress.com. I really appreciate you having me on tonight. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to coming back on in November so I can listen to some of your listeners to find out what we need to be doing once we've won.
I can really appreciate that. One other thing that I've just noticed as I've been interviewing people throughout the country, different candidates, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people from military backgrounds are getting involved. Like tomorrow I'll be interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Alan West.
Oh, he's so great. He's a good man. Tell him I said hey.
I will definitely do that. And Bill Randall has a military background. Do you think that plays a large part in your love for this country and obviously wanting to make a difference?
There's two aspects to that. I think that first of all, military guy, being in the military is not a qualification. There's a lot of guys in the military that frankly couldn't lead their ass out of a paper bag with both hands. The point is that it's not being a good Christian isn't a qualifier. Being a good businessman isn't a qualifier. But what it does do is that it demonstrates that you have some real love of country, and maybe along the way you got some character. Not everywhere, right? We saw Jack Murtha, but it's something that I think is important and special. What it also does is it demonstrates that you've made some choices to sacrifice instead of just go out and do things for you. You've tried to sacrifice and do things for others. You were willing to die if that's what you were asked to do for your country. So chances are you probably love it pretty good. Now, again, there's some lefty wackos that have worn a uniform, so it's not everybody. But you could say with some safety. But you know what else it does? And especially right now, we haven't had as many veterans running as we do right now because in the past, even now, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to run for Congress. I'm on the phone. My voice is hoarse because I'm on the phone every day asking people for money. But you know what? And veterans usually don't have it. They haven't had the same kind of opportunity. They've spent time in the military where other guys were on their careers, so they don't have the same kind of social networks. They don't know everybody in the community. How can you know everybody in the community when you're in Afghanistan for a year? It's just a fact. So they have disadvantages. But you know what? This time around, they're so angry, and the fact of the matter is that the war has come home. For so many of us, we feel that the threat overseas is dangerous, but boy, it's the threat here that's even worse than anything we're fighting overseas, and we got to look inward and save our country. And I think that that's getting men and women to step up, even though they know they don't have the resources. And you know what? The American people are rising up to support them. Al West is doing a phenomenal job fundraising. A lot of good candidates out there. You know, this organization, Vets for Freedom. There's other great groups, Iraq Vets for Congress, that are supporting.
I see you got a lot of those endorsements too. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, your listeners can support organizations like them because they're out there supporting candidates like us. And with that note, my friend, I want to tell you thank you so much for having me tonight. It's been a real honor and a real privilege, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. Give them the website one more time, so if they want to help donate or anywhere they can help you, please give them that the website one more time.
Yes, Wayne, it's PantanoForCongress.com. And of course, if you could spread, it's Pantano for Congress is our Facebook page. Please friend us and share it and help us get the word out there. We can take our country back if we do it together, and I appreciate the help.
All right. Well, thank you so much, sir. I can hear it in your voice, the passion. We need people like you in Congress to help make a difference and get this country back on the right track. So it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for your service to this country. Thank you for getting involved and trying to make a difference.
Hey, thank you for your service to this country. I know you're not sitting making millions doing a show like this. You're out there trying to raise awareness, and I salute you. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and you're definitely welcome back on the show anytime, and good luck on the primary next week.
Thank you very much. God bless. I'm out.
God bless you, too. All right, that was Ilario Pantano. He is running in the 7th District in North Carolina. I'm waiting for Bill to call me now. Bill Randall. I'm hoping he's listening in and ready to give me a call here. But again, talking to these candidates throughout the country, it's really evident that people are ready for some change, and it doesn't have to come from the change of seasoned politicians who know how to talk and give talking points for up to 20 minutes. But again, that's a skill, a unique skill set to be able to sit and talk for 20 to 30 minutes and absolutely have not said anything. So again, I'm really happy to hear people like Mr. Pantano, who again have the commitment and the love and for this country, that generally want to make a difference and want to make things better here. They're not doing it for a power trip or any of the wrong reasons. So again, I want to thank Mr. Pantano for coming on the show this evening. Again, if you can, go to his website, Pantano for Congress, and if you can support him, please do. Spread the word. If you have family members that live in North Carolina, I encourage you to give them a call. Let them know that you've listened to this man and you believe that he might be a great candidate for North Carolina and obviously for our country, because, again, that's why I've been doing what I'm doing, interviewing Congress candidates. These are people, regardless of where they live, they're not in your district or in your state. They still affect the laws. They still affect things that affect me and you. The Bart Stupak vote, he was from Michigan, but he ended up being the difference for passing that bill. And again, you need to know the people we're electing throughout the country. Again, if you know family members in that area or friends that live in the area, you ought to encourage them to take a close look at Mr. Pantano and his record and his campaign. So I'm waiting for Bill. Hopefully Bill calls in soon. I know he's out there on the campaign trail. They told me that it might be a possible scheduling conflict, but hopefully he'll be giving us a call soon. But again, I thank Mr. Pantano for coming on tonight. His story is truly amazing. Just like I said, reading through his records, he's always been someone that wanted to excel at whatever job he was at, whether it was in the Marines, whether it was at Goldman Sachs, or any of these places. He's always tried to be the best at what he does. So I don't have any reason to believe that if he's elected to Congress that he wouldn't continue in that same kind of work ethic and diligence. So again, I want to thank him for coming on the show, and hopefully I'll be talking to him again in November when he's in Congress. And again, like he said, he wants to talk to the people and hear their ideas and concepts on what they think that needs to be done to get this country on the right track. So I'm waiting on Bill to give me a call. Hopefully they're listening in, and they're going to be giving me a call soon. If you're listening to the show tonight and you liked what Mr. Pantano had to say, or if you have any comments, give me a call. I'm on the call-in line, 347-996-3175. Again, that call-in number is 347-996-3175. 996-3175. Again, tomorrow morning, this has been a great week for me. I must admit. Last night I had J.C. Watts on the program, and I also had the chairman for the Frederick Douglass Foundation, Timothy Johnson, on the show. Ilario Pantano, who, again, I've been doing my research on. Great conservative candidate, a great candidate for America. And hopefully Bill will be joining us soon. Again, he's been on the show before, so I know Bill's pedigree. I know what Bill's about, but I think, again, I want to share his vision with the rest of my listeners and the rest of the country and whoever's listening out there. These are the kind of candidates that we need to get America in the right direction. We do not need lifetime politicians, people that have never worked in the private sector, people that have never held what I would consider real jobs. Not to say that their job is not important, but a job where you're actually the money that you spend is your company's money, or personally, if you're a self-employed person, you're gonna watch your budgets a lot more closely. And quite frankly, most of the people that are what I would consider lifetime politicians, people that have been in Congress, have been senators for the last 15, 20 plus years, like Nancy Pelosi and people of that nature, Barney Frank. These guys have lost all touch of reality on what's appropriate, how we spend our money, because again, they're dealing with other people's money. It's a lot easier to be reckless with someone else's when you're dealing with someone else's money than when you're dealing with your own. And that's the whole point of being in the private sector, dealing with and being in business. You're gonna make more acute decisions based on the fact that you want to still be in business next year. If people ran their businesses like how our politicians run our government, quite frankly, most businesses would not survive. And if we ran our household the way that the way the government does, a lot of us would be out of our homes. We'd be sitting out on the porch somewhere or sitting out in front of the curb because we've been kicked out of our house. We're overspending, spending what we don't have, and again, as a society, we've made that almost a mistake that again it crosses all color and economic backgrounds. As America, as a country, as a culture, we live on a credit culture. We're on a instant gratification where we have to have things now, and sometimes I think that's played a large part in why we can turn a blind eye to our government wasting our hard-earned tax dollars. Because quite frankly, a lot of us, including myself at times, have lived beyond our means, and again, we have to pay for it. Now, again, an individual, when he does that, if he goes over the edge, spends more than he has, is in debt to the point where he cannot function properly, any money that he brings in is going to still be less than what goes out, they file for bankruptcy, individuals and businesses. Our government cannot afford to file for bankruptcy. We can't afford the bailouts. I mean, it can happen. If it happens in Greece, it can happen here. And people need to understand that these the programs that we're initiating, including the health care bill, and now what the president's proposing with this cap and trade bill, energy reform, it's a further proof of that they believe that the government needs to be involved in every aspect of our lives. With that energy reform bill, people need to understand that part of the proposal is if you were to sell your house, that government inspectors could come to your house, make sure that you have energy efficient windows and everything of that nature before you can even sell your home. So you're talking about in the situation right now where the economy's already rough, we're already feeling the pain, and some people are running from their homes, whether it be through a foreclosure, through it be short sales, or if they're fortunate enough to have equity in their home where they can actually sell their home without a short sale. The idea that someone else could, a third party, namely our government, could come in and make that process even more difficult, more expensive, is very disturbing. There's no question that we need to look at other avenues for fuel sources and create other outlets. But the reality of the situation is we could still be drilling. We could drill closer into the land, and some of these problems that we're dealing with now wouldn't be happening. I mean, the government who forced these oil companies to go 5,000 feet, to the water and underneath the surface to drill for oil. when again there are places that are available that could be drilled that again these environmentalists who have large sums of money who again they buy off the Democratic Party just like I guess a lot of people could assume that the oil companies have been in the pocket of the Republican Party for so long, but like J.C. Watt said last night, if you look at it since 2008, or since really the Democrats have been in power, you would almost assume that they have been the largest benefactors of BP and all the the oil companies' donations and their money because these guys don't care who's in power. They just want to get their agenda done. And so when you're dealing with whether it be Democrats or Republicans, we need people that aren't going to cow down to these large companies and special interest groups. We need people that can understand a month ago when he's paying $3 or $4 at the tank for gas that he's not going to feel a warm and fuzzy feeling because they're offering him a donation or offer to fly him somewhere on their plane to look at some of their possible sites and things like that. So we need people of integrity. I think we need people that don't come from this political background that this is all they've ever dreamed of, is being congressmen and senators, and a lot of them have done it for the wrong reasons. It's all about a power play, and again, I think we really need to look and pay attention to the kind of people that we're electing, whether, again, throughout the country. You can start with your local politicians, but again, when you start picking congressmen, these people affect not only you and your state, but they affect the whole country. And I think that that's what people really need to look at when we're making these decisions. And again, I think you need to do your research, find out who's endorsing these people, make sure that we're getting the right people. Lexi, I'm glad you like Ilario Pantano. I like him too. I think he's a great candidate for Congress. Again, we need more people like that. Thanks, Lexi, for listening in. I know you're one of my favorite friends out here, so thank you again for listening in this evening. And again, I think people need to really pay attention to the people that we're putting in power because if they're doing it for the wrong reasons, nothing's going to change in D.C. We can talk about change again. That was the president's selling point that he was going to change all that. He was going to stand up to special interest groups, and he wasn't going to play those the same Washington D.C. game. Well, lo and behold, he's actually taken it a step further. He's become someone that's so partisan with his ideology and with the way he's doing things that he's basically shut the Republicans out. And he doesn't. And at this point, because they have the majority, they don't feel like they even need to play ball. So again, people need to really look at that, pay attention to what's going on. It's very unfortunate, again, that we're putting people in place that once they get there, they become part of the problem. I think that's one of the things that people have asked me that I want to get involved in running for positions and things of that nature. And sometimes I just honestly believe at certain points that people get intoxicated off the DC lifestyle, and that's where the problems come in. I think some people generally come in with good intentions, but at this point, even after we elect these politicians, we have to do our job to keep them honest. We have to show up at town hall meetings. We have to send out emails to our leaders, send letters, keep them honest, because it's not going to work just electing them and then letting them go off to D.C. and forget about the people that put them into that position, which again I think is more commonplace now with a lot of these career politicians. They honestly believe, they think they know everything. They think they know what's best for our country, regardless of what the people are saying. And again, we need, the first thing he said, if he's elected, he wants to come back to the show to get input from the people. I think that's something that, again, you need to really pay attention to, because I don't believe that a lot of our so-called knowledgeable and experienced politicians do that anymore. They have an agenda that's either set by big businesses or special interest groups, whether it be the corporations or the unions that are in partnership with these larger corporations. The unions, again, when Obama said he wasn't going to, play with the special interest groups, I don't think he was referring to unions at that time, but lo and behold, unions have become a special interest group in America. They always have been, but they've become, with this health care bill, at a time when they were drawing up the bill, they had enough juice to go in there and say, look, we don't want that Cadillac tax on our workers. That's unfair to our workers, as if the rest of the country doesn't believe it's unfair to them. I mean, so because you're fortunate enough to, I won't use the word fortunate, but because you have a union behind you that you're paying on your behalf, they take the money regardless. They can come. They have the juice to come and speak to the president and tell him face to his face that if you don't take that Cadillac tax out of that bill, you will not have our support in 2010 and 2012. That, my friends, are special interest groups. And what the president did, which I think, again, is in his own way of trying to make everyone happy instead of standing up on his own too and letting people know exactly how he feels, he goes and says, okay, well, I won't put that Cadillac tax in there until, I don't know, 2016, 2018, when he's long gone. He won't be the president anymore. I don't think he'll make it past 2012, to be honest, but that's something for another day. But essentially, he's going to leave that into the lap of the next president to have to deal with, and it'll probably be a Republican. So that'll be something that presidential, the president's going to have to deal with, because at some point, when that tax kicks in for those unions, I guarantee that they're going to go and fight it tooth and nail again and feel like they shouldn't have to pay it when the rest of the country is. And a bigger issue with that is what people need to realize, and it's something even the unions won't be able to stop. If the government comes and offers cheap, low-quality health care, a lot of companies, I remember Caterpillar being one in particular, they're not going to offer health care benefits anymore, people. If you have a job right now, a good job with good benefits, which you consider good benefits, a good health care plan, your health care plan is in jeopardy just as much as anyone else's. The lie that they've spread is, it doesn't affect anyone else. It doesn't affect the people that already have health care. Try telling that to their employers when they start looking at the numbers that they can save by telling their employees to go ahead and get on the government health care plan. I mean, that from a business standpoint would only make sense. Why would I pay you? I'm already paying your salary, I'm already paying your income. Why would I pay your health care benefits when you can go to the government and get it for a lot cheaper price? I know that the quality of care might be different, and that's something you're gonna they're gonna tell the employee. That's something you're gonna have to deal with. And so I don't think that people truly understand the ramifications of that. Again, if I'm a business person and I have a small business, if I only have 10 to 20 employees and you're paying health care benefits to them now, there's no way that you're not going to at least objectively look at the fact that you can probably get them on a government health care plan, which will save you money. You might be able to hire some more people, but you might just pocket that money. That was money you didn't want to spend in the first place. And I just can't believe that. And again, this is part of the bigger plan. Obama and his staff know that he's no dummy. He understands what the implications are, that and he'll blame it, and what he'll do, and what he's done, he'll blame it on the greedy corporate companies that are kicking people off their insurance, but knowing full well that was going to happen when you offer a health care plan of that scope and that scale. So again, this is why we need Congress people like Ilario Pantano, like Paul Wellday, people like that are going to come in there effectively and make a difference. Start chipping away and reforming that bill, making it something that, again, not unless they get the majority in the House and the Senate, it'll be very hard to just overturn the law until we have obviously a Republican president in 2012. But at the very least, they need to do is start trimming that bill down. Tort reform, again, that to me is no health care reform without tort reform. That is the biggest cost involved right now in the healthcare industry, and people can deny that and work around it as much as they want to, but that's just part of it. If you're not going to include tort reform with this healthcare bill, then it's not really healthcare reform. It's just another bulky bill aimed at making America in love and in bed with this big government plan of again. I don't like to use the word socialism because that's kind of become cliche at this point. People are calling it socialism but the honest truth is that they really want a government too large to fail that we'll all have to rely on in one way or another to live our lives, whether it be through health care, whether it be the higher cost of energy bills if we institute these taxes that they wanted to deal with. And I think it's disgusting that instead of the president focusing on just cleaning up the mess that we have now, plugging that hole, he's focusing now on the next political agenda, which is his energy bill. And I think that again, that is the kind of thing that he said he wasn't going to do. He wasn't going to be a politician. It took him 60 days to talk to the CEO of BP. And again, I want people to understand that the media is just starting to catch up with this because he's a media darling. They love him. So he's not had to deal with the same kind of pressure, the same kind of scrutiny that George Bush did. Again, if this oil spill would have happened on George Bush's watch, this would have been front page news every day until while this oil spill is going on, and yet it does not make the front page of every paper. This is not the first issue that we're talking about on a daily basis. Now, at this point on day 60, yes, it's definitely caught the media's attention a little bit more. But in the very beginning, again, Obama was placing all the blame on BP, which is a legitimate claim. But instead of playing the blame game at this point, we need action. We need someone to go in there, clean that mess up, and then you can deal with all the political aspects and the wanting to file charges against people and all. I mean, again, that makes no sense. You think a large company like BP is going to be willing to help, give you anything extra as far as information or ways that they could do things when they have to worry about a possible loss, a criminal case being brought against them. Now is not the time for that. Right now is the time for action, a time to settle, fix the problem at hand, and then down the road, if you want to deal with it and politicize it. Again, that's something. Rahm Emanuel, that's right out of his playbook. Never let a crisis go without politicizing, capitalizing on it. And I think again, it's unfortunate because you can see right through that. Instead, again, the most of that speech yesterday evening was more regarding the new bill that he wants to implement, new policies he wants to implement, as opposed to dealing with the real problem, which is the cleanup. Getting the funds to the people that need them the most in Louisiana, where the only person that's shown himself to be a true leader is Bobby Jindal, and the way he's handled the scenario. But, that's what we need. We need leaders, not politicians, not actors, not someone that's going to walk down there, look at the sand, pick up something, and go, oh, it's some oil. Like he didn't know that before he got there. We need someone that's going to come in there and shake up things. If BP has been that negligent, I think it's a good start putting a escrow fund together for what they call legitimate claims. Well, again, imagine you being a small business person or a homeowner calling BP trying to establish what's a legitimate claim or not. They're not going to just give their money up. So, again, this is where the problems are going to be when our leader is not stepping up to the plate and making things happen instead of, again, playing the game of politics. Right now is not the time for that. And again, we need leaders and we need new leadership that surrounds him. I think it would be a good thing, like Ilario was saying, that if he has a Republican Congress, maybe he can add some balance to this because there's just no checks and balances. They're writing blank checks left and right. There's so much money coming hemorrhaging out of D.C. right now that, again, they're the only place in America that's doing good. They're the only people that's prospering because, again, they're printing money out of D.C. right now, and I don't want my U.S. dollars to turn to pesos. I just don't, and I think that that's the direction we're heading in financially. If we continue with the reckless spending, I don't want my kids to work in a situation where they're spending, a majority of their income will go towards paying taxes for the bad policies and bills that are being wrote up right now. It's just not fair. And again, that's kind of like why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not making money, and I've asked my listeners before to, if you want to donate and help me spread the truth and knock down some of these liberal lies. I appreciate your support, but I don't do it for that. I do it strictly to, again, help out, doing what I can. I never been able to serve in the military or anything like that. So this is my way of helping out my country. This is my way of doing my small part, and I hope that everyone else figures out their route and what they can do to get more involved. Whether, like I said, whether it's being a volunteer for a candidate, whether it's Again, making calls, emailing people, your leaders now, we can all make a difference. So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm sorry that Bill couldn't join us tonight. Again, they kind of pre-warned me that there could have been a scheduling issue, so hopefully we'll have him back on. I'll be talking to Alan West tomorrow, and I'll have that interview next week. So thank you for listening to Conservatives Cool Talk Radio. Your host, Wayne Bradley. God bless you and good night.